to know. Oh, we need to show. Listen, watch, and flow. You need to.
I need to know, I need to know, I need to know. You need to know, you need to know, you need to know. We all need to know. What do you need to know? What do I need to know? What do we all need to know? Today, by the special grace of God, we are going to be looking at the book of Romans, chapter 9, verse 13. It's one of the controversial Bible verses. We are going to be looking at the interpretation, the biblical interpretation or hermeneutical interpretation of the book of Romans chapter 9 verse 13. Bible says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Paul was quoting the book of Malachi chapter 1 verse 2 to 3. Malachi chapter 1 verse 2 to 3. Here to support his teaching about God's sovereign choice in salvation. God's sovereign choice in salvation. That means when we are talking about God's sovereignty, you don't have any say in it. You don't have any contribution. It is God entirely. Is the one, that's why is the Alpha and Omega. Is the one that take decision that you can't overrule the decision. When we are talking about the historical context, author, that is Paul, writing to the Roman believers around around 57 AD. Paul was the one that wrote the book of Romans. So he was writing to the Romans believers around 57 AD. So the audience, a mixed community of Jews and Gentiles in Rome, wrestling with questions about Israel's place in God's redemptive plan. They are asking questions about the Israel place in God's redemptive plan. So the section, that is the book of Romans chapter 9 to 11, addresses God's sovereignty in election, Israel's rejection of Christ, and the inclusion of the Gentiles, because Israel rejected Christ and now God grafted the Gentiles into salvation. So let's see the literary context. Romans chapter 9 verse 6 to 29 deals with divine election. God's promises have not failed, even though not all Israel believe. God's promises cannot fail, even though all the Israelites do not believe. Therefore, Paul shows that God's choice of Jacob over Esau illustrates his freedom to choose apart from human merit. Paul is now telling the Romans church that God chooses Jacob over Esau. Illustrates his freedom, God's freedom to choose apart human's merit, according to the book of Romans chapter 9, verse 10 to 12. Verse 13 is Paul's scriptural proof. Malachi 1, 2 to 3, for God's elective love. So when you see the key words there, that is the Greek insight. It says loved. It's a past tense, which means agapesa. Agapesa means past tense of agapao. That is meaning conventional, faithful, love, not mere affection. When you are talking about love, it's a past tense of agapao, meaning agapesa. So it's a conventional, faithful love, not mere affection. It also talks about hated, that is emesesa. Emesesa means past tense of mesio. Past tense of mesio, which in Hebrew idiom often means loved less. I love them less or rejected. When you study the book of Genesis chapter 29 verse 30 to 31 or the book of Luke chapter 14 verse 26, Paul is not describing emotional hostility but God's sovereignty choice. God have a sovereign choice. He is the Alpha. He can do and you can't question him. So interpretive view. So election to service, that is corporate view. Malachi refers to the nation Israel from Jacob, Edom from Esau, not just individual. It's not talking about individual person, it's talking about nations. So loved, that is God's covenant choice of Israel, called covenant choice of Israel. Hate means rejection of the Edomite from the role in Israel or salvation. So when you now see the election to salvation, individual view, God's sovereignty shows Jacob, that is line of promise, where Christ will come from, and not from Esau before they were born, according to the book of Romans chapter 9 verse 11. Emphasis God's unconditional election in salvation. So covenant contrast, that is love and hate, as idiom, that is Hebrew idiom uses love and hate comparatively, meaning God favored Jacob, Israel, for the covenant role, while Esau, that is Edom, was not chosen for that role. So what is the significance? God's sovereignty, that is salvation and covenant blessing, are based on God's choice, not humans or lineage. God's faithfulness, his promises never fail, even when people misunderstood or misunderstand his election. Human responsibility. Later in the book of Romans, Paul emphasized both divine sovereignty, Romans 9, and human response to God's call, Romans 10. Christocentric fulfillment. Ultimately, God's electing love points to Christ. The true chosen one, according to the book of Isaiah chapter 4, verse 42, verse 1. So, through whom God's both Jew, that is through Christ, both Jews and Gentiles are included. What is the common interpretation of this verse? What the people are interpreting? Harsh fatalism, that is something God hated Esau in an emotional or vengeful sense. But the context shows this is about covenantal choice, not personal animosity. Therefore, rejection of free will. Paul does not deny human responsibility. Instead, he highlights God's sovereign purpose in salvation of Israel. So, anti-Edomite hostility. Malachi addresses Israel versus Edom, not justification of ethnic hatred. So, how do you now apply this verse today? Rest in God's sovereignty love. Believers can trust that salvation rests in God's faithfulness, not human effort, not by your works. It is by God's faithfulness. It is by God's, so it is by faith, not by works. So we are saved by faith, not by works. Therefore, humility. God's choice is based on his mercy, not human merit, not because you merited it or because of your works, not at all. According to the book of Romans chapter 9 verse 16. Hope for all nations. Though Esau was not chosen for the covenant line, that is where Christ is going to come from. Remember, it says, Jacob I love. That is Jacob I choose. I choose Jacob where Christ will come from. I rejected the lineage of Esau. Christ will not come from that place. It's not that he hates him or he loved Esau more than he loved Jacob more than Esau. It was just, it's an idiom. It's an idiom language. So nation, that is hopeful nation. Though Esau was not chosen for the covenant line, through Christ the door is open to all who believe. If you are still Edomite and you believe in Christ, you will surely be saved, according to the book of Romans chapter 10, verse 12 to 13. So in summary, the book of Romans chapter 9, verse 13, quoting Malachi. That place is, Paul was quoting Malachi in the book of Malachi 1, 2 to 3. Is not about God's emotionally despising Esau, but about his sovereign choice in election. God loved Jacob, past tense, loved Jacob by choosing him for the covenant line, while hating Esau means rejecting him for that role. That the focus is on God's sovereign mercy and covenantal purpose, not arbitrary favorism. So you'll be able to understand that, oh, God hates Esau. God, no. It's just saying, I choose you where Christ will come from. That is the meaning. God bless you. God be with you. In Jesus' mighty name. Shalom.